So before we get started, I'm biased as hell. Not only am I really into JDM cars, but my first car was a 2000 Acura Integra. Now that we've gotten the obvious out of the way. We are living in what I hope is the end of another malaise era, which might be a bit of a hot take considering some of the horsepower numbers coming out of OEMs these days. Your average crossover can beat up on most gas crisis era performance cars, but the past malaise era was one of not only lacking performance but of dull, boring design. So personally, I think we're moving out of an era more of cynicism than malaise. Boring, safe designs would push performance. When you think about it, it's just a fact that manufacturing has only gotten cheaper, easier, and more advanced over the years. Plus, in the States, cars have more and more shifted from being a luxury to being basically a necessity for a comfortable life. And let's be honest, humanity has gotten pretty good at making an internal combustion engine. The same OEMs killing their favorite children will gladly sell you a competition-ready crate engine, because power is cheap now. So if all you care about is money, it of course makes sense to take as little risk as possible on aesthetics, and then compete in some other aspect, like performance, luxury upgrades, or an area that's become more and more commonplace, user interfaces. Because more than ever before, we are living in a world where the only fact that matters about a car is that it's a product, something that can be sold. Which leads us to now, or almost a year ago at this point if we're being honest. Everyone's favorite brands are either unveiling, teasing, or rolling out new editions of some of their most popular models. Meanwhile, your boy went from living the dream to looking at it after some in a Jeep destroyed it. So like a lot of you, I was sitting there looking at these new releases like, maybe I should buy a new car instead of just another shitbox. And then right on the anniversary of the incident, Acura dropped the generational shift trailer. And I gave into the hype just a little. So coming into the debut, I was convinced I had some idea of what I was in for. But I was wrong. So very wrong.
What the fuck, y'all? God damn! God damn! God damn!
But there's still the question of why people hated it so much, especially considering I continue to see one sentiment over and over again. It seems like every comment section has to contain some variation of, well, the Integra was always supposed to be just a Civic. Or someone thinking they're smart because they remembered the first gen Integra. So we finally reached this section of the video that explains why I'm making this at all. Also known as why I think you contrarian brain corporate simps are wrong. Because you just are. And like, if you can't tell that this Integra isn't in the same league design-wise as these, like, there's not much hope for you. Maybe get some glasses. Like, I'm legally blind, and even I can tell why kids prefer the taste of Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
I see that.
Right.
All running.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Taste you can see.
I think I can explain why the new Integra was rejected pretty easily. But I'm bitter, so we're taking the scenic route. If you look up the history of the Integra anywhere, you'll probably see it referred to as a redesigned Civic, essentially Acura's rendition on the already popular chassis. But the key word there is redesign. The Integra had to be different enough from the Civic to help both establish Acura as a new brand in the US and still be distinguishable as a separate car in Japan, all while being based on an already existing chassis. But I won't patronize you anymore. If you're on this video, you probably already know that Acura is just Honda trying to sneak into America wearing a suit and tie. The US government coddling our automotive industry by making it harder for outsiders to compete changed how Japanese cars were made and sold. Of course, when you're a company selling a new car, the most important thing from a more cynical point of view is the target market. Who is going to buy this? Which in turn can play in the more creative aspects of development. The question who will buy this becomes who are we making this for? And suddenly you're engineering solutions for a certain type of person or a specific lifestyle, instead of just trying to target the largest market possible. This is something I'll cover more in depth later, but the very fact that even the supposed good guy OEMs are also doing this lowest common denominator engineering is all the reason I need to hate this era of cynicism. I'm hard pressed to find another way to describe OEMs going and competing in things like seeing who can engineer the best car for going on a date, or getting in street fights with the Germans over sedans, and of course actually making unique crossovers to just joining the crowd and selling the same uninspired bulk of plastic and metal as everyone else. Because now cars have to be made for everyone. Not saying that I always feel like I'm about to start an annoying hot take, but this take is only hot at first glance. Because when I say cars should be made for everyone, I'm really just talking about the process of designing and creating a car. Most cars today are designed as products first in order to sell to as many people as possible by covering as many bases as possible, which I suppose you would twist into a noble goal if they were attempting to combat climate change or something by building one car for every problem. But that's not at all what's happening. Every OEM is just copying every other's homework and overproducing disposable mass market vehicles instead of targeting a specific market or set of related use cases and engineering a car for that. This methodology of designing solely for the bottom line just oozes cynicism. Why create anything new or of any quality when you're still making money? But I digress. Obviously, there's no faster way to figure out what a company thinks its target market is than to look at its commercials. So by going through a couple of commercials from its home country and the one it was basically designed for, we should get a pretty good understanding of what the Integra was. Since the launch of the Integra marks the launch of Acura, and according to Acura itself, the 2023 Integra marks Acura's reestablishment as the performance wing of Honda. And honestly, after going through all these commercials, I realized just how much I love old car ads. So for the sake of brevity, we're pretty much just going to focus on a couple ads for the first gen Integra, and maybe I'll come back to the other ones in another video. I don't know. I may have to do some editing to the music in both of these, which will take away a lot of the vibes from these commercials, so please take the time to look them up yourself. I give that warning for the first commercial and pretty much it alone, because oh my god, it has no right being this good. It of course being one of the Honda Integra Pure Spirit commercials. Now I'm more than sure that's not their official name, but that's what we're calling them here.
君は波の中から飛び出した。季節は今。DOHC ロマン。Pure Spirit。ホンダインテグラ誕生。ホンダベルのから。
This is probably my favorite commercial from this ad run. Just nothing but vibes, which might come off as Honda just flexing until you consider the fact that in Japan the Integra wasn't necessarily a new car. Yeah, before you big brain boys hit me with another, well, it was always just an upgraded Civic. It was actually just an upgraded Honda Quint, the Civic's original higher class Euro style brother, which is why in the Japanese ads it's called a Honda Quint Integra. The Integra replaced the Quint as the Civic's more luxury sport oriented sibling, so considering it was an already known name and, well, the state of Japanese advertising at the time.
愛しているから
美しくデジタルで聞くテクニクスインテリジェントコンポ
This is Jennifer.
It's not just vibes for vibes' sake. We've got moody weather, the stars of my favorite soap opera, aloof and androgynous, sun and sunglasses activities, and this fucking guy with the glasses, number one. 10 out of 10 right here. Best man. All of this comes together to highlight the positive aspects of this car by relating them to a youthful European aesthetic. Yes, the Integra was always just a slightly luxurious economy car, but it was one with the performance to back it up and styling separate enough from the Civic that it was sold as a rebadged Rover in Australia, aka the DDM, or the didgeridoo domestic market. This is in some contrast to how the Integra was advertised in America.
Programmed fuel injection, 4 valves per cylinder, Formula One technology. If you drive simply to get from point A to point B, you'll miss the point of the Acura Integra.
If the Japanese commercials try to highlight the Integra's luxury aspects and Euro roots, then the American ads are strictly business, less of that pansy-ass artistic imagery and more bold statements and performance buzzwords to announce the arrival of Acura to American shores. And my god, if this line isn't past Acura calling out its modern counterpart.
If you drive simply to get from point A to point B, you'll miss the point of the Acura Integra.
But we both know advertising isn't worth anything at all. Acura has been calling itself the performance and luxury wing of Honda for years now, and has only barely delivered on one of those claims. But I didn't share those ads with you for no reason. It helps establish the mix of engineering and aesthetic choices that made the Integra what it was. Along those same lines, I brought up the Honda Quint, because this is what the Integra was before it was the Integra. And even at this early stage, it had an identity all its own, completely separate from the Civic. In the past, Honda sold its cars in 3 different types of dealerships. Those being Honda Primo, the last of these dealerships launched around 1985 to sell traditional family Honda products like the Civic, and also K-cars like the Honda Beat. About a year before, in '84, Honda Clio was established to sell Honda's luxury vehicles like the Legend and Accord. And finally, the first one established, and the one we'll be focusing on today, Honda Verno. which was meant to sell higher option sport-oriented cars, aka only the heavy hitters, like the Prelude, Integra, and later the NSX and S2000. So in order to compete in a new American market, Honda needed a new car. They turned their fairly sporty, quirky crossover into a bona fide sports car. They reworked the design of the Quint, upgraded the suspension, swapped the rear brakes for discs, and finally slammed a dual overhead cam engine under the hood. Honestly, now that I think about it, maybe I am okay with the Integra only being called an upgraded Civic. Maybe the Quint being its origin isn't enough of a distinction for me. Maybe I've accepted the truth. After all, if this is what was required for the Integra to just be an upgraded Civic, then what in God's name is this?
What the fuck is that?
This is why bringing up the first in Integra in defense of whatever this is honestly pretty funny if you know what you're talking about, and you're not just brainlessly trying to defend a corporation that couldn't care less about you. If you know how crazy an upgrade just having disc brakes at all four wheels was for an economy car in 1986, you'd be quiet. And that's not even mentioning the fact that it had a dual overcam engine, which is absolutely insane for an economy car at the time. And of course, the obvious difference in effort put into the design of the body. This is actually why I brought up Honda's old boutique dealerships. Clio, Primo, and Verno are more than just different dealerships. They're clear divisions in methodology, each dealership representing a different target market that Honda was focusing on in the development of their cars. I may say that cars shouldn't be designed for everyone, but that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be a car for every person. Williams used to understand this. The Civic was an entry-level commuter car. If you had a family, you could buy the Legend. Or if you're a racer and don't need a girlfriend or back seats, you could get an Integra or a Del Sol. It's like how Mazda used to have the Miata, RX-7, and Cosmo. Each one was allowed to be great because the others were always there to pick up its slack, so to speak. The Miata could focus on being lightweight, cheap, and fun. The RX-7 could focus on being sporty, balanced, and fast. And the Cosmo could focus on its interior and a comfortable ride. There's something to be said about why JDM cars of this era are so revered, because they were built for goals outside of just profit, and why I say a car shouldn't be for everyone. Trying to appeal to as wide a market as possible usually just lands you with a Camel, or in this case, closer to an Edsel, a car built for everyone that just ends up being for no one. I need this to be clear. I'm not mad it's a little bigger. I'm not even mad about it having 5 doors. It's pretty much always had that variant. But this is so aggressively lazy, so uninspired, so painfully dull. I literally can't think of a worse insult than the fact that I have to yell that it's an Integra to you, so you know what it is at all. Don't even get me started on the colored exhaust tips. I swear to God, it doesn't make plastic. I feel like I've pretty much covered how I feel about this already, but it's honestly pretty depressing because I don't hate this ad fully. Like, I have some chat for all the people who shot, edited, and worked on this, because it's actually really cool. You've got all the generations of Integra here, even the DC-5, which didn't even get the Integra name in the States. As a black person, it's always funny being advertised to, because it's usually just another woke radio ad trying way too hard to relate to you, but then it'll be something that you yourself are interested in. And personally, there will always be that part of me sitting there like,
Oh my God, this is crazy.
even though in the end it's just another ad trying to sell me something. And boy, did this commercial hammer that feeling home. This weird mix of seeing and hearing almost exactly what I want, but all in service of something I know is just a soulless product. If this is how the new Integra is released, I think it will be remembered as a victim of its time. Because on some level, I think corporations see this as a turning point. They've been clinging on to the literal dying vestiges of every older generation with access to disposable income. They went from making cars specifically for baby boomers to our current lineup of soulless mass appeal blobs. So it's funny to watch Honda cart this out as some new release for the youth TM, when it really just looks like all of your competitors were dropping a new model of one of their popular tuner cars, and you just realize that you're the only one without a fun sporty model after a fucking plague killed all the old people. They took a quirky compact crossover and turned it into one of the best front-wheel drive sports cars ever made, and now they're making it into just another car. It goes beyond a disappointment in naming, but the name symbolizes so much of the problem. It's a special type of American bullshit, or whatever you want to define basically every company in existence competing to offer exclusively the cheapest bullshit possible. Personally, I can't get enough of this timeline. It's pretty dope watching companies go from competing in their own special little engineering competitions to taking over the market and moving to making derivative trash. The story of the Integra is the story of how Honda went from beating Toyota and Nissan to the punch with the launch of their luxury brand, to lagging behind and missing the mark with their supposed relaunch.